I think a lot of people want to know who Alexander was and how did he arrive at this thing that we call the Alexander technique. He was from Australia. He was born and grew up in Tasmania, and somewhere along the line he became an actor. He was an orator. He recited Shakespearean monologues. That was his thing. And at that time, it was common for that to be done in a theater that had, a balcony where people sat. And so the manner of delivery would be something like this, And what happened is that somewhere along in his career, he was pretty young. He was in his mid-20s. He started to lose his voice when he performed. And he went to doctors of the day, voice teachers of the day. People would give him suggestions which he would dutifully follow. I want you to not speak at all until your next performance. I want you to drink tea with lemon and honey. And he would adhere to that strictly, and when he would go to perform the next time, he would lose his voice again a little way into the performance. So somewhere along the line, he realized that the problem must be something that he was doing, And so he set about this process, which was actually quite long. It was a 9-year process of self-study where he spent the majority of his days observing himself. And he used what was available to him at that time was a system of mirrors. He used different mirrors so that he could see the back behind himself and the side and in front of himself. And so he began to study his own movements as he went to speak, as he began to speak. And what he noticed was that there were a multitude of things actually that occurred when the moment that he had the thought to speak, he started to do a number of things. And so his 9-year process was what you might call the unraveling of that. And his journey through that is outlined in one of his books, which is called The Use of the Self. It's readily available on Amazon, and it's probably the only one of his 4 books that I would recommend if someone wanted to read something about the Alexander technique. The Use of the Self is probably the one to go to, and particularly the first part of that book, about the first 80 pages, he talks about his journey through that. So about mid-1890s, he started to teach. He kind of arrived at a place where things were working quite a bit better for him, and he wasn't losing his voice anymore, and people started asking questions, and he became known as the breathing chap, actually. That was his nickname. And because he worked a lot with people that had vocal troubles, people that had breathing issues, and so forth. And somewhere in that process, presumably, this person traveled to where he was. This was a fairly famous actor, I don't recall who it was, from London, and suggested that he come to London and work with some actors. And he moved to London, and he basically lived there the rest of his life.